Good morning, everyone, or wherever you are in the world. We are back with Mr. Photon to talk about water. Now, Mr.
Morning.
Photon, morning! He's up bright and early just for you guys. Trust me, he is. I got him out of bed early this morning. I'm so sorry about that. Tell us what you do and what you can offer the audience, please.
Well, today I am a man of many talents, as you know, but today we're going to be talking about health and wellness, specifically water. And I am a environmental and lifestyle coach, and I deal specifically with the environment. So things like light, water, sound, movement. And I coach people to be able to, let's say, add in the things from nature that are making us balanced and subtract the things in our modern environment that may be making us weak. So if someone wants to get a hold of me for a consult online, they can contact me at my email. It's digitalfreedomtactics@protonmail.com. So that's Digitalfreedomtactics, TACTICS. But without further ado, let's get into this probe because we have a lot to cover.
Okay. All right. Just one quick question.
Sure.
How does noise pollution affect the body?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like it's a vibration, right? Just think of living next to a highway, right? Over time, you get used to it, but it's a frequency that's affecting your body over time, right? So, I mean, it's an added stressor. Think of all these things in our environment, they're added stressors. And we may take them for granted because we get used to them. And our bodies are just not used to being in those environments. We're used to being in, evolutionarily, hearing sounds in nature. It's amazing when you step into a forest, when there's no noise pollution, you're away from the highway and you just sit there and tune into all the little things that are going on. There's all this information coming into your body, right? Not to mention the sights that you see in a forest. There's so many different colors and things buzzing around. And then the sound of birds, the sound of crickets, the sound of all of this, that has a massive effect on us. And we don't realize if we live in a city, there's this constant hum that's there. And you don't really realize it until you go camping. You're like, right? But it's all that kind of noise, whether it's a sound or it's artificial light or it's EMF, as we'll get into. But yeah, it is a big deal for people. Absolutely.
No, I cannot handle noise pollution at all. That's why I asked that question. I can't handle living in an apartment complex because I'm so sensitive to energy. Like I can't have people that close to me. Like it's okay if it's my family or my friends, but when it's unknown people, their energy, it really makes me feel unwell. And noise pollution makes me feel very unwell. So yeah, I had to ask you that question. All right. Well, so let's rock and roll with the water.
Right. So we're going to bring in our panel of experts here. So first we have Masato Iamoto. And then you got him.
Yes. I take it he's crossed over.
Yes. These ladies and gentlemen have all crossed over, I believe. But I'm gonna.
Well, standing here in hologram form was my first clue. So I just wanted to double check I had the right person. But yes, I have him. He's happy to be here today.
I'm happy to be with him. Next up, we have someone new that you probably haven't heard of. It's Manwei or Mei Wan Ho. I'm sorry if I mispronounced her name, but I can see her picture here on the left.
I don't think I've heard of her.
Not many people have.
Wow.
She was one of the top water experts, in my opinion, in the world. She could have won a Nobel Prize for her work, I believe.
Wow. Okay, I've got her.
And then you may have heard of this fellow. His name's Victor Schauberger.
Maybe somewhere. Yes, maybe.
He was, I believe, Austrian. He lived I believe, in the late 1800s to early 1900s, and he was again a water expert. He lived in nature all of his life and really studied nature in a way that nobody else really has since his time. So he's a very interesting fellow.
Wow. Okay. Yep. I've got him here as well.
Okay, and then we're going to bring in one more person, and this
Oh.
is Robert O'Becker. He is an
Oh,
orthopedic. He was an orthopedic surgeon.
I know this one.
Oh,
Okay.
really? Okay,
Is
cool.
he the one that created the Bob Beck machine?
No,
No.
no, this is not Bob Beck. I know Bob Beck. No,
Oh, okay. So it's not the same person.
no, he was an orthopedic surgeon in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and his claim to fame was he was studying humans to see if he could regenerate limbs in
Oh,
humans. And he studied salamanders. And through this process, he identified the key factors in the human body that make us electric. We're actually electric beings. And his
oh,
work
that's
is still, it's still very popular today. Not so much with regular surgeons, but people that study the body in terms of electricity. This is the go-to guy.
oh, okay.
Okay, so now I'm going to switch my window here.
Reason, but anybody's wondering what Bob Beck was. He was somebody who he invented the Bob Beck machine or the Beck machine, which is, but he believed healed the body through frequency. And I think you put things on your wrists and then it sent impulses through the body. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe that he uh, managed to heal a bunch of HIV patients. And I think that experiment took place in Canada, actually. Anyway, we'll do another video on that another time, but that's quite amazing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bob Beck is really yeah, he has these little machines that you can still buy today, and basically it sends little frequencies through the body, and then that's supposed to negatively impact any kind of bacteria that also resonates at that frequency.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's how it works.
Okay.
All right, so let's get into some questions. Let's start with Masato Iamoto.
Mm-hmm.
So in your last water video, we actually, with Mr. Robot, we actually got a really cool way to supposedly structure the water that we're drinking by saying a little prayer to the water.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing that ever since. And I've I think I came up with my own kind of script for it. So I want to offer this script up so everybody can use it and see if we can find if it's optimal or we can change it in some way to make it better.
Okay.
So this is the prayer that I say to my water. I am commanding this water with love and gratitude to offer me health, vitality, confidence, and self-love. I am trusting in this water's ability to send the energy and information in the perfect ways necessary. And then after I consume it, I say, I am grateful for this pure water.
Wow. That's really intense. So when you were saying that, and we've addressed this before, what he is giving to me is if you can electrically charge that water in the moonlight, even better. So you say to the moon to bring down the electrical charge, positive electrical charge, balancing alignment into the water as well.
Okay, so does that have to be done when the moon is out?
No, not necessarily.
So
That was a good question.
I can do that throughout the day.
Can you do that? Yes, yes, you can, because you see, this is great. That is what we all have to constantly keep aligning to, right? The moon dictates the magnetic field that we all live in. And what I'm getting is we constantly have to shift and adjust our alignment to whatever the moon is doing. So sometimes when we feel out of whack, it's because there's been some sort of magnetic shift in the moon, and we are out of balance or out of alignment. So you want to always try to align yourself with the moon. And you can do that by electrically charging your water with the moon.
Okay, so what would be a good phrase to tag on what I'm saying to do the charging from the moon?
Well, you want to charge it up before the water, before you consume the water, sorry.
Okay. Okay.
And you want to say, so he's telling me, what do we want to say? I connect this water that I will eventually consume to the alignment of the moon. And you want to form like an etheric energetic channel from the moon to the water, and you're just allowing the moon to electrify the water. So you really just, it's very simple. I know when there's a full moon, oftentimes a lot of people that do this kind of stuff, they leave their water, their crystals, their potions, whatever it is they're using out either on the excuse me, the windowsill or outside, and they'll allow the full moon to electrically charge their, things that they have out there, crystals, cleansing, all of that stuff. So it's really just a simple command procedure.
Okay. And so yeah, so that's not necessarily necessary to put it out at night. It'd be maybe more powerful. It's not necessary to sit it out overnight in the moonlight.
No, it's not necessary, but it's just something additional that you can add. I feel like your script is actually quite perfect, but what I am getting is you want to easily and joyfully bring those things into you, right? So you always have to use those words easily and joyfully. People want to sit there manifesting this and doing that, and they don't use the words easily and joyfully. Well, things can come into you, but if you're not using the words easily and joyfully, I'm sorry, you've been warned, things can happen. So
Right.
easily and joyfully is also needs to be a component.
Okay, good. Sounds good. Okay. How quick does this have an effect on the water when I'm saying this script?
It takes a while to absorb that vibration.
So I can't just be saying it right before I consume it. I need to let it rest for a bit.
I would give it 5 minutes. And does he need to say it more than one? You need to say it several times. So that vibrational energy needs to go into the water.
Okay. All right. This is good stuff. Okay. And if I were to, so Masaru Emoto, for those that don't know, he was someone who studied water, and he had experiments where he would send, vibrations or thoughts, or, he'd play certain types of music to water, and then he would freeze the water, and we would see geometric shapes form based on the frequencies he was sending to the water.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I believe I was asking Masaru Itamoto because I was explaining that he froze the water right after exposing the water to positive emotions and thoughts and music, and it was shown when he froze the water there was certain geometric shapes that would form with different frequencies, and if I were to freeze the water and I had a proper microscope, would I see the effects from saying this script that I've come up with?
Yes.
Wow. Interesting.
Yes, you would. So the patterns in the water of where you put frequency into versus just a regular just a regular water pattern, the structure is going to be completely different.
Wow. That's so cool. Okay, so my next question is kind of, we understand like homeopathic kind of remedies how, and if you don't, I'll explain a little bit. So in the simplest terms, I'm not an expert on this, but they take a substance and they put it into water, and then they centrifuge it or something, or they spin it and they remove the substance from the water. And then I guess the memory of that substance is still there, but when they actually test for the substance, the actual substance is gone. So you could put in like a herb or even a medication or something like that. Is it possible to program the water in that way without using a physical substance, with just using thoughts?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. And how would you go about doing that? Is that a lengthy process? Like I'd have to come up with a script to imbue a certain substance in the water and thank it and then say it like a bunch of times? Or is it just is it an involved process?
Yes, it has to be taken on a particular wavelength, right? Now your voice generates wavelengths, energy. So could it be carried on the voice? No, it cannot be carried just on the voice alone. If you're say you've got like some vitamins, right? You want to transfer these vitamins in, or the effect of the vitamins into the water without actually consuming the vitamins. It has to be taken on some sort of wave to the water. And you can do that with Scalar.
Okay. And can I do it with simple like audible frequencies? Like if I knew a certain frequency, or is it outside of the audible range?
Ooh, is it outside? It's outside of the audible range. It has to be a different type of frequency.
Okay, so there are devices that you can buy, that you can actually modulate the frequency, and it may not be, it'll be outside of the range that you can hear. So, for instance, you mentioned at the beginning of the video, like Bob Beck, like that's a very simple machine where you can put electrical charge in there, but you can get more sophisticated ones, like you've mentioned before, the spooky.
Mm-hmm.
So, spooky, you can actually go in and program specific frequencies, and they have a list of, I haven't looked at it in ages, but they have a list of like different like bacteria and like different ailments, and they have a specific resonant frequency for each one. I don't know if they have a resonant frequency for like certain vitamins. They might. I think they do actually. So if I were to get a hold of something like that, like let's just say the spookies, it's not like super expensive, but if I had the resonant frequency of like a vitamin or something, and then I were to drop the electrodes in the water, is that how it would work? How would the frequency pass from something like a spooky into the water?
So you would have the whatever it is you want on a in the field, and then you have to direct that field where it needs to go, right? So then you
Okay.
use your voice and you're directing the scalar, you're commanding the scalar what to do, how to do it, and where it's supposed to go. Or
Okay.
what if you just put the water in the scalar field? You could put the water in the scalar field along with the vitamins or whatever it is you want to put in the water, and you could then command, because you needed to make that jump, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you would then command it to go into the water that way.
Okay.
But this is a very lengthy process. This is something that would take a long time to do.
So a long time, meaning hours, days?
Meaning it would be something that you have to do on a very frequent basis in order for the body to have the same effects as just taking the vitamin.
Oh, yes, I see what you're saying, right? So the body has to recognize it as what it is over time. Okay. Well, it's interesting. Maybe someone can take that information and run with it. Who knows? Maybe I will one day. So, okay, now we're gonna keep Masaru Emoto there, and we're gonna actually run through some physical water structuring units that are constructed that you can purchase yourself. I want to see how are they worth it? Are they, do they shape up? Can we just get away with doing the prayer, or is there, because I know there's different ways to structure water, so I'm assuming there's different effects. So the first one we're going to look at, I'm going to stop this share, and we're going to actually look at, it's called Myron glass. I'm going to bring it up here for everybody to see and you to see. Share screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Oh, yeah.
So this glass is interesting because it allows certain frequencies of light to pass through the glass, specifically frequencies of UV light.
Oh.
And so people have suggested that you can take these bottles, fill them with water, set them on the ground, and set them in sunlight, and that will have an effect on the water. So can you ask if is that having a structuring effect where the ultraviolet light is passing through the glass and then it's also grounded by being on the earth?
I mean, yes, that it does what it says it's supposed to do. What does it have an effect? I don't feel like the effect, it doesn't really have much of an effect, more so than just drinking a glass of water.
Okay. All
What
right.
sort of effect is it supposed to have?
Well, so I mean, it's supposed to structure the water in some way and give it energy.
Does it structure the water? I mean, it does structure the water. Does it give it energy? Yes, it does give it energy. Would it make us feel more energetic? Not necessarily.
And why not? What's it missing?
Why not? What's it missing? It needs exposure to the full range of sunlight.
Ah, that makes sense.
Does that make sense? I don't even know what this guy's talking about. What does that mean?
Okay, we're gonna talk about this in another section of this, but I'll quickly mention it. So there's a way to structure water, but you need multiple frequencies. So here it's only allowing ultraviolet light to pass through. But the other key that I think I'm gonna ask about this later is we also need infrared light. And so the infrared light actually structures the water in a certain way, and then the ultraviolet light comes in and adds charge to it. That's how it's supposed to work. So right with this method, we're only getting the ultraviolet, or, not the full spectrum, like you said.
So you definitely need ultraviolet light. I'm sorry, infrared and ultraviolet. Yes, it's a perfect combination. So infrared, sorry, and ultraviolet, really they work in conjunction with one another.
Perfect. We're going to get into that a little bit later on, but I'm going to move on to the next slide here. If I can just get my screen. Okay. So the next one I want to look at is a water vortexing unit. So basically, this is like a handheld unit where you would run it under, hopefully not tap water, but like you would pour water in the top, and it spins around inside, and it comes out the other end, and it's supposed to be vortexed in a certain way. So I actually want you to bring in Victor Schallberger on this one, because he's the vortexer guy.
I have never heard of vortexing or vortex water. Okay. Vortex. Okay. What would you like to know?
So Victor, is this a good way to vortex first of all, does vortexing, is that an effective way to structure water?
It depends what you want to do. What do you want to what do you want to achieve with structuring the water?
Well, there's many claims for what it does. Number one, I want to hydrate the body better, meaning I want the water to be absorbed by the body efficiently, more efficiently. Is that an effect?
No.
Really? Okay.
Mhm.
How about there's a lot of claims that vortexing water will remove like things in the water that are not good, like particulates or like even chemicals, like pesticides.
Chemicals and pesticides? No.
Really? Okay. That was always skeptical of that claim as well. The other thing that's claimed is that it structures the water in a specific way where when you spin it clockwise, you're releasing oxygen, more oxygen into the water. And then that actually is what creates like a hexagonal shape in the water. And this is supposed to give it the structure of nature. So is it making it more structured by spinning it clockwise like this?
Yes.
Okay, and so what effects, positive effects to the human body and health does it have, if any?
It can if you spin it that way, but it has to be spun for a long time.
Ah, okay. So something like this handheld unit here, we're passing it through and then it's spinning for, I don't know, maybe only 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, or, or can you just tune into this unit? Does Victor think this is an effective way to structure your water or vortex your water?
No, it needs to spin for what he says approximately 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, so how about this? What if you were to pass it through something like this multiple times over? So you pour it in the top and you pour it back in, pour it in the top, pour it back in.
Yes, that would work.
Okay, so you gotta set the timer for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That seems very yeah, I'll take a pass on that.
Right. So this is a handheld unit. They also sell units for your entire house where you would hook it up. I'm just thinking of this because people travel and there are, you know what I mean? I thought it would be more convenient this way and it's cheaper also than getting a whole house unit. Kenny asked if there's a whole house unit they sell because the water is running, through the system. Is that enough time? See if I can pull it up here.
Through the system. It depends. If you're just using it to shower or, regular things, then, it doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're wanting to drink it, to consume it, you definitely need it to have more time. And it depends on the amount. So for that small amount, 2 minutes is relatively enough time. But then if you start getting into larger amounts and you have to like disperse things and restructure things, then it's going to take longer. So on that note, I'm getting a no.
Wow. Okay. So the more volume of water you have, the longer it needs to pass through.
According to them, yes.
Okay. This is very interesting. Okay. This is kind of cool because we're looking at like cutting edge stuff, but there's a lot of like skepticism around this stuff as well. And so, now we're actually seeing, okay, so it works, but you got to do it this way. You got to tweak it a little bit, right? And no, like, for me, like, there's no way for me to go out and measure this probably as well as you tuning into Victor Schauberger. So this is like, I believe this is a really good use of, a probe because it's information that we would, you might take years in a laboratory to figure this stuff out.
Well, what about it? And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Diphtherium or Deuterium depleted water. Have you heard of that?
We're gonna talk. That's in this probe.
Great. All right.
We're gonna talk about that. Don't worry. I'm gonna go through a few more units here. So this is now Victor. This is supposedly based on Victor's science. They're selling it as something inspired by Victor Schauberger, his design. What does he think about that? Is this an effective way to structure the water?
Is this an effective structure the water? No.
Is it any better than the one that we previously looked at?
No.
Okay, so this one is throw this one out the window, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, I was always kind of skeptical when people start throwing Victor Schauberger's name on this stuff, because when you look at his processes, they were pretty, intense and technical. So I was like, when I see something like this, I'm like, they're just trying to make money off his name, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
This is another one that's kind of like the first one we looked at, where you pour it in the top, it comes out the bottom. They make all kinds of claims on it, but is it any more effective than the first one we looked at?
And is this also a
Vortex.
vortex?
Correct.
No.
Yeah, I kind of figured that as well. Lots of marketing behind this one. Okay, this
So
one's a. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, let me just ask you this, Mr. Photon. What is the thinking behind it? So you're spinning it, you're what, increasing the oxygen, or what is the thinking behind this again?
Well, there's different theories of how it works, but the one that I'm aware of is that you're spinning it clockwise, and then inside the molecular structure of the water, you're releasing more oxygen. And because the oxygen is water is attracted to oxygen, it then creates these hexagonal sheets that spread out from the middle of the vortex. And this is what creates a structure in the water that is similar to what's happening in nature.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, it does. He says it does create more energy if you're consuming the water. But again, it has to be a lengthy process, not something that's so quickly spun. And I feel like whatever those things were that you just showed me, they're really I don't feel like they've had enough scientific experimentation done on them. I think they're just making a product and saying that, it does this, it does that, based upon this Schamberger or whatever his name is. Yes, what he did.
Right. And so let's go back then. So if I were to have the first device and I put the small amount of water through it, like for like 2 minutes, what kind of benefits would I be getting? So we got that it's giving us energy, but does it also increase the amount of water our body absorbs to hydrate it?
Eventually, but that's a process. So he's saying that your body would then get used to ingesting that new structured substance, and our body would naturally make adjustments to, how best we how what is the best way we use this thing that has been ingested.
Right.
There's a lot of chemical and mathematical equations, even energetic equations on that level. When we're ingesting something, the body has to read it and know what to do with it. What is the best thing to do? What is the most efficient way of using it? And I'm saying, but what happens when there's plastics or pesticides or things in the water, and the body then has to find somewhere for those things in the water to be dispersed to cause minimal damage to the body?
Right.
And the other thing that I'm getting is, sorry, Mr. Photon, the other thing I'm getting is that those things cannot be removed from the body. So if you are ingesting even small amounts of plastic or whatever, chemicals, pesticides, the body will try to dispose of it, but it understands by reading it on that molecular, level, that okay, this is something that's going to cause harm. This is something we can't have here, we can't have there. So therefore, how are we going to get rid of this? And over time, it just doesn't detox out of the body. So that leads me to another question. Sorry. If we go on a juice fast, and when I talk about juice fast, I don't want people to just go running stuff through their juicer, okay? Because that's not how it works. You have to do like 80% non-sugary vegetable, 20% sugary, no more than that. It has to be done properly. You have to do your research. But if you go on a juice fast and you put the body in the state of autophagy, would the cells in the body completely, they scour the body, would they gobble up the plastics and all of these chemicals? Not necessarily, but somehow it would find a way to dissolve these things that are in the body and then hopefully pass them through. Now, a lot of times people want to do juice fasting or these detox plans, but they only want to do it for like a day or two. That's not enough. It really has to be a minimum of 7 days, depending upon how polluted your body is. You may need to do 30 or 60 days. So I just wanted to check that because that always concerns me about the amount of plastic and chemicals and things that we consume in the water.
Okay, so I have a bunch of stuff now to ask you based on what you just said. So we're not gonna get off track. I have a list of things here, but I want to sidetrack for just a second. So you mentioned juice fasts, but what about water fasts? So and what I mean by that is you're only consuming water and maybe some minerals, maybe some salt in your water, and that's it. Now, would that be a more effective process to detox than the juice fast?
I feel that what they're saying to me is that it's such a drastic measure to go on a complete water fast that it's almost like, first of all, you shock the body.
Right.
And a lot of people can't go beyond the shocking of the body because it's so drastic. Therefore, the effects of the cleansing, it's not that effective. That's very interesting to me because I know people that do water fasting, but the most they can do water fasting is like 4 or 5 days. It really has to be longer than 7 days. So you're better off intaking the nutrients through juice fasting, a more sustainable fast.
So the big difference is that there's no calories coming in. With the juicing, you're actually feeding your brain with sugar, right? But in the water fast, if you're adapted to it, and you made a good point, is like you have to ease into something like this. You can't just be like someone that's never done it before and do 4 or 5 days. You have to actually acclimatize your body to actually burning fat for fuel as its primary source. So you can ease into that by you start doing intermittent fasting, or you skip a day of eating. You work your way up until you can get to longer and longer periods, so your body gets used to burning a different energy source. So let's say hypothetically the body was used to fasting. It's not as much of a shock to the system. Would it be more effective when there's no calories coming in as opposed to the juice fast, meaning that you could do a shorter water fast and it would be as effective as doing a longer juice fast?
Sure. Juice fast. It's not as effective as doing a longer term juice fast. The longevity is the key. Isn't that amazing? Because I know people that do water fasting, right? But because it is so severe, they can only do it like 3 or 4 days. And I mean, it is severe. They're in bed mostly the whole time. It's a major disruptor to the body. Now,
wow, see, I don't have that experience. I have the opposite. Actually, after the 3rd day, I get tons of energy and my brain turns on. And I believe it's because I'm adapted to that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what I was about to say. You are more a clean eater anyway. most of us out there, we don't eat clean, right? We just don't, for whatever reason. Money is also a factor as well in that.
So
But
that makes sense because your fat stores toxins in a big way. So when you're doing a water fast, you're actually burning fat for fuel, and therefore you're releasing the toxins in the fat. So for someone that has a heavy load, they're going to feel more negative effects by doing a water fast.
well, and if they're not used to fasting, well, first of all, but the longevity is the key. I keep getting that. It's the longer you can stay on the fast, the more beneficial it is to the body. It's not so much that it's just a water fast. It's the fact that you need to stay on it as long as possible, because the longer you're on it, the more your body is in a state of autophagy and the more cleansing it can do. If
Can
you
you,
were just doing like a 3 or 4 day fast, okay, yes, you start to think clearly. You start to, I mean, you do. Now, most people on a 3 or 4 day fast, they feel horrible because it normally takes a good 5 or 6 days to start feeling a lot better, because you're really, it's the shock and the natural hunger response is kicking in. You're having the headaches, your body's sending signals, right? Feed me. And you really got to get to a point where, okay, there's no food available here. So now the body has to have time to switch gears into optimum operation in order that you can go out and you can hunt and you can find that food, right? Because we still have that basic programming from, God knows how many thousands of years ago, when we were, living like animals. I mean, we are animals, but we were living like animals and we had to hunt for our food, and sometimes food was scarce. So the key really is what I'm getting, longevity. The longer you can stay on the fast, the more healthy the body and the more time the body has to cleanse. And this goes for damage and disease cells. It's not really so much the calories, it's about the fiber intake.
okay. See, what I think is generally thought of is that the autophagy, it kicks in a lot quicker when there's no calories present. And then in the juice fast, it takes a lot longer to get to that because the sugar is coming in, right? And
let's ask that question. Is it faster doing the water? Yes, it's much faster. You're right. But it's not sustainable.
right.
You need to do what is sustainable. And what is sustainable is a juice fast. Now, again, this goes in line with the 80% non-sugary veg to the 20%. You never sit there making sugary juices. Never, because your blood sugar spikes. Then you want to pass out. I mean, you're just wrecking your body.
So there's a researcher called Walter Volkow, I believe his name is, and he does a similar thing to what you're talking about. He has a process for really low calorie, like he juices like low sugar stuff, and then he also makes soups.
But the focus isn't just on the calories. The focus is on the fiber, because your body, what happens is when we eat a meal, okay, we have to digest that meal. It takes so much energy to digest that meal. So energy has to be pulled from all over the body in order to digest that meal. And it takes a lot of blood flow, and it's, you got to break it down, then you got to package it, put a bow on it. Where is it going to go? How are we going to use that? So even reading, as we discovered earlier, reading what this is, how we're going to use it, where are we going to go? That takes a lot of energy, but it's taking out the fiber. So if you're just drinking juice, you don't need all of those processes and all of that energy to digest food. You're just absorbing juice and water.
And more volume of it as well. Like you can juice way more volume of the substance.
And you can. So you're not devoiding your body of nutrients, right? Because you're still getting the nutrients in the body. So it's not as much of a shock as water, because basically when you're just doing water fasting, you're devoid of all these nutrients that you need. So it's not devoid of nutrients, but what it does is it's not so taxing on the body to digest the foods. Therefore, the body can go into healing mode. Now, it takes, or autophagy. So it takes a very long time to make that switch, right? Everything is a process. Now, what these guys are telling me here, they're saying at least a minimum of 7 days. And the longer you can go, the better. You go 30, 60, 90 days juicing, you're going to come out like a machine.
So minimum effective dose, what they say is 7 days.
7 days minimum. Really, if you can go 14, 21, because also it's about retraining the brain. It's the brain that says, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. And as we've learned in our other probes, that the brain is powerful. It overtakes the conscious mind. It starts, giving you all these physical symptoms. It's cranking up the messages that are being sent to the conscious mind. Feed me, you can't live without food. And so a lot of people, they have to go to bed when they're juicing. It's not for the weak. It is not for the weak. But the longevity aspect of the juicing, and also they're saying you want to make sure the water is really good water, purified water. So it's about going into 30 days.
The vegetables themselves that have, they're made up of a lot of water that they've taken up from the earth. How much of an effect is that water that's in the vegetable itself?
How effective is it? It's very effective. Now, does organic mean organic? See, organic means organic, but does organic really mean organic? So I'm saying, does most organic food now, is it free of, all of those nasty things that are in the soil? Not always. So, whatever the plant or the vegetable is or even the fruit is absorbing through the soil, there's still a lot of toxins in the soil, but hopefully it's less of an assault. Now, that just makes me have a light bulb moment. And I'm saying, okay, so everything is toxic then. Basically, everything is toxic. And those of us that are not juice fasting, or not living on a vegan diet, or not living on an organic diet, we're just filling our bodies with toxins all day, every day. And they're pointing to my bottled water. And I told you I have a bad bottled water problem. So all of this is bad. We're just changing the DNA, the structure of the DNA, to cope with this onslaught of chemical laden living. Now, the thing that they're saying about the juice fasting is the fact that it's not so toxic as our everyday toxins. So therefore, the body goes into like a reverse gear, and it helps to throw all this stuff out. But again, it's longevity. They keep shouting. It's like they have their megaphone. Their holographic megaphones. It's longevity. The longer you can do it, the better.
Okay. All right. Duly noted. Okay. So the other thing that you mentioned in the first little bit that you were talking about was also like the plastics in the water. And I wanted to know about this device here. There's a little bit of controversy around it right now, and I actually use it.
Ooh.
So this unit is called the Berkey. It's been around for a long time.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, and I've used it for years and years and years and years, not primarily as my main filtration system, but as kind of like a backup. I brought it with me to Mexico so I could just, double make sure the water I'm getting is good. Why don't I see the right one here? Yes, so there we go. So basically it's a gravity fed unit where you pour the water in the top and then and then it goes through these carbon black filters, these cylinders, and then it drips out the bottom. They claim on their website that it is effective at removing plastics to a certain level. Pretty good. Is it effective at taking plastic out of water?
Not all, but most.
Right, and that's what they claim. Like it's like down to micron levels. So
that's correct. Wow. Okay. Wow. Is this thing quite big?
They're all different sizes. So this one's a gallon and a half, which is a travel version. And then the big one is 2.5, and they go all the way up. I think the one I have is, what do I have? I think I have the 2.5 gallon one. It's, it's on your countertop. It's not too big. It comes apart into 2 stages, so it can fold inside of itself when you travel. Okay, so how about for just general like pesticides and like chemicals? Does it do what it says it does when it comes to that? Like are the scientific studies that they've done on the water, is that legit?
Yes, mostly, yes.
Okay. Yeah, because you can go online and you can actually look at the third-party studies that have been done on the water that it filters, and they're pretty good. Like they're really good. So if that is what they say it is, then I feel comfortable with it. There's just been some controversy recently that it doesn't do what it says it does.
Who put that out? A competitor?
I don't know. It could have been a competitor that, was being stealthy. But it was, there's just, in the natural news sphere, right? There's people that do their own tests and stuff.
It does take out as much as possible. Now, that's because it's filtering it through many different carbon levels.
Yeah. They advertised in the beginning that it was like, military grade, and you could take it to like a stream in Africa and use it like in the field and, filter out anything that was in the stream.
Okay. I wouldn't ever put my trust in something like that, but okay.
If that's all you got, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, exactly. But yes, it does. It does. But you can also achieve that same level of filtration by running it through like a Brita 5 times.
5 times?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't trust the Brita.
It's a lot of hard work.
So okay, so is that true though? Does the Brita actually, would it be equivalent to this?
If you ran it through 5 times.
Wow, okay. All right.
Why do you not trust Brita?
Well, I mean, you can look at the third parties from Brita, and they're nowhere on the level of what the third party says for this.
Right. But this is just running it through 1 time each.
Okay. See, I don't trust the Britas. They're good. They're good at like making the water taste good, but in the third party studies they show, it doesn't really do a good job. But maybe 5 times it does. Okay, so I just had a question about that. Let's just finish up the structured water. So where was I? Okay, so the next thing, we're going to look at a different technology. It's not really vortexing this one, although you are stirring it. Where is it? Ah, here it is. It's called the analema.
Okay.
And what it's supposed to be is that there's water inside this wand that's coherent water. meaning that they have this special structured water it's already structured. It's already like energetically the way that they want it. And then when you stir it in the water, it's supposed to, like, by resonance or by, like, transferring the molecular structure of the water inside the wand to the water that you're stirring. Can you ask our panel, is this effective at structuring the water?
Yes, but only very small amounts. I mean, with a name like that, I thought it was an enema.
I know, it's a very unfortunate name. Their marketing, I don't know. I definitely would have gone there. I have no idea where they're going with that name. So, okay, so they say, yeah, you put it in your glass before you drink the water and you stir it around. That's kind of how it's advertised.
I mean, it can, but it's only like for like. So the amount that's in that wand would only affect the same amount in a glass.
Oh, okay. So like a small 8-ounce glass of water would be all that it could do at a time.
Is that 8 ounces in that wand?
Oh no, but it's maybe that's the closest thing I can think of. Is it equivalent? Can you ask?
No, that's not equivalent.
Okay. All right.
That's very expensive.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it would be definitely an expensive way to do it. Unfortunately. Okay. So that's probably not a good idea. Okay, so let me just check. Did we have anything? I think that might have been all for the ones we were going to look at. So, oh yes, there's one more thing I wanted to check. So I actually make one myself and for on the cheap. So I'm going to share my screen with, hold on, let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can go. I have to look at my notes for this. Okay, so stop share. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is basically what I do to structure my water on the cheap. So
oh my God.
The right, you see these dice. And what it is, it's funny. I buy Dungeons and Dragons dice, and then I remove all of the shapes until I have only the Platonic shapes. So the Platonic shapes are found in nature. So if you were to go to like a stream and there's little rocks and pebbles in the stream, or the formations of the earth where the water's passing through in a spring, it would pass by these Platonic shapes naturally in nature. So the idea is again, you fill a container like I have on the left with these shapes, and you pass the water through the shapes.
Mm-hmm.
Do these Platonic solids, is this effective at changing the molecular structure of the water?
Yes.
And so this is similar to like running the water through like a creek or like a stream.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, now my other question is, since we learned with the vortexing, it takes 2 minutes. Is this something similar with this? How long does the water have to pass through the shapes?
Several hours.
Ooh, several hours. Okay.
So I don't understand. So the natural water in a stream, with the rocks and the shapes and the movement, what does that do?
So it's a physical process. There's literally molecules in the water that have a certain shape. So let's say like our tap water, for instance, the theory is that it's passing through all these right angles that would never happen in nature. It's also in these cylindrical shapes that would never perfectly happen in nature. So we never get the geometry that water would literally physically pass through. So these shapes are called the Platonic solids, and they exist in nature naturally. I think they're the only shapes that exist in nature naturally. Like to some degree, obviously they're not perfect. They're different variations of it. So by passing the water physically through past the shapes, you're giving the molecular structure something similar to what's found in nature.
It's a cleansing process.
Okay. Now, the container that I have on the left, basically it's made of like a PVC, like just plumbing stuff that you find at a hardware store. But the water probably only sits in there for, again, like 30 seconds. How many times would I have to run it through for it to be effective?
About 100.
100 times, huh? Okay.
But if you could create a machine that is constantly flowing, so you know what I mean, like a fountain almost. So the water gathers at the bottom, then it goes, it's a constant flow of water. Water is constantly moving through, and you're adding more, and it's running through there. You would have to leave it on all the time. That is the purest form of water, not stagnant. It's where it's constantly flowing. That's amazing.
Okay. All right. And I don't know if there may be devices like that already. I'm not off the top of my head. I couldn't pull them up, but we'll have to revisit this again to see if there is something that already exists. I mean, you could ask, is there a retail device out there that exists if I do my research?
Yes, they're very expensive. So I feel like these are your high class, like restaurants, health spas, homes where, these are really in-depth processes where the water is constantly flowing. It's like a fountain. So you could create where your filter, okay, so it would be something that goes through this first with all these structures, and then it hits the filter, the filtration system, and then it's taken back from there and gone back in through these structures. Like it's constantly flowing, constantly filtering. That's the most clean, obviously, unless you're dipping down into a stream that is really clean, like spring water. But spring water isn't stagnant. Spring water is constantly flowing. So
Right.
that would be, if you could invent something like that, Mr. Photon, because I know how inventive and creative you are, that would be something that you could create. That is the purest and most energetic form of water, because what keeps water energized is the flow, is the movement I'm getting. So you're going to have more energy if you're drinking from water that is constantly moving and creating flow.
Okay. And how long would that last? Like, say we did have a device do that. How long can it sit in a container before it loses its potency?
How long does it sit? Well, it starts losing it immediately. So the second it stops flowing, if you're capturing water, that's when it starts losing its potency almost immediately.
So I used to collect spring water back in Canada. Very lucky to be next to one of the best springs probably in the world. And I mean, I would definitely feel the benefits more when it was fresh. But I mean, it wasn't, practical, right? Unless you live next to it. So there's no way to maintain the freshness. It really has to be like always flowing.
Always flowing.
Okay. All right.
If you want absolute fresh water,
Interesting.
always flowing.
Okay. All right. So just a comparison. So this method of just me running through the water like a bunch of times, maybe say I run these shapes like 4 or 5 times. Is it just better just to do the prayer? Did he ask? Like, is it just more?
We've come full circle. Is it better to just do the prayer? Yes.
Well, then that's great. I mean, I'm trying to come up with a low cost things for my clients to do. So this, the prayer is obviously the least low cost. It's just you have to be willing to do it. Right. So that's good to know. Okay. So the other thing I want to know about is the effect of electromagnetic fields on water. So I want you to pull in Robert O'Becker for this one.
Okay.
So can you ask him, let's say we do the structuring with the prayer. Are electromagnetic fields in our environment affecting the water that we've structured? So like say Wi-Fi routers, cell phones, Bluetooth.
Absolutely, they interfere with water. They can restructure the water.
So let's say they're everywhere. So let's say I structure the water with my prayer. How long do I have until the EMFs are tearing the structure down?
About 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, so you got to do this before you consume the water, unless you're living in the forest. They're all around us.
There. I mean, some people love living in the forest. Me, not so much. No. Okay. I like the sounds. I like the look of it. Do I want to be out there being eaten by mosquitoes and snakes and all that? No.
Here's the other question that I have, because I've been reading some research on this, that the water that is interacting, like say when you germinate a seed, right? There's water that interacts with the germination of the seed. I've been hearing that electromagnetic fields, like we just mentioned, have an effect on the germination process in seeds and plants.
That is correct.
So before you germinate your seeds, ladies and gentlemen, you want to say the prayer to the water first. Would that be effective?
Yes.
Now, here's the other thing that those studies were, I don't know if they actually did them or they were theorizing it, that DNA interacts with water. And there's an energetic or even like magnetic process that goes on between the water sending information, and it goes back and forth almost like they're talking. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And is this process being affected by electromagnetic fields?
Not immediately. It's only after the DNA has inserted its electricity into the water. And then if the water hits another electromagnetic field, then that would rearrange the structure.
Okay. All right. I'm going to do another probe on all of this, but I just want, since we're talking about water, it's kind of apparent, but at least people know that they can germinate their seeds more effectively, because I'm hearing that that's a problem. A lot of places they're having trouble germinating seeds. So you got to pray to your before you germinate seeds.
But you can also talk to your seeds.
That's true. It's a two-way street, right? It's not okay. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, is there a better material for storing the structured water in to preserve its effects? Like, is it better in glass? Is it better in metal? Ceramic?
Is glass the best way, or is it ceramic? Ceramic.
Really? Okay, cool. I would have guessed the glass.
I'm surprised by that answer. Now, ceramic as in, not clay ceramic, but as in treated ceramic. Even though it's treated with chemicals, yes, because the ceramic structure, as long as it's, it blocks out, it helps to protect it from electromagnetic fields. Whereas glass, it can go through.
Huh. Interesting. Okay, and obviously the metal is a conductor.
Yes, the metal is, you know what? Okay, this makes sense to me. I cannot drink out of those metal containers. You know, the metal coffee cups or metal teacups, and something about it just, I'm like, no, I have this natural reaction that says, no, I'm not drinking out of that. And that makes sense to me because it's such a conductor. Anything that hits it, I don't know. It just makes me feel weird when I drink out of a metal container. I just won't do it.
So here's my next question. What about copper? A lot of people, oh, not a lot of people, but there's a thing of drinking out of copper cups.
It's drinking out of copper cups. Yeah, that's relatively healthy. Why would
So,
they drink out of copper?
okay, so in ancient times, I believe it may have had, they may have used it for like disinfecting or something like that. But my thinking is because it's a really good conductor of electrons, it may be like, say you put the copper on the ground, it can grab electrons and put that into the water. That's how I'm thinking.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so if we take water, we set it on the ground, what's the minimum effective time to affect the water electrically?
It takes about an hour.
Okay, that's doable. And so yeah, so you can get a copper vessel. Actually, here where I am, there's people that make copper vessels. So I'm gonna try it. This is gonna be an experiment for me.
God. What they drink out of copper there?
I mean, not the average. It's more of a decorative thing, I guess. I don't see people drinking out of it all the time. It's more of like it's they make fancy stuff with it. Probably sits on people's shelves. Looks fancy,
Ah,
but I can get a hold of it pretty easy here. So I'm gonna try it out.
but you want to make sure it's not corroded or eroded, or
Good
it has
point.
to be really clean copper. And if you drink from something that is not clean, it can poison you.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, let's move on to exclusion zone water. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So we're going to look at some cutting edge science here. So exclusion zone water is studied by Gerald Pollack at the University of Washington, I believe. And what he's discovered is that water can act like a battery. Might be some background noise. Can you hear that?
No, you're fine.
Good. So it acts like a battery when it comes in contact with certain frequencies. So in his lab, actually one of his students accidentally or was doing an experiment where he shone infrared light on water that was in a specific beaker that was water loving, it was hydrophilic. And he noticed that the energy in the water increased and it could do crazy things. And I'll show you an example of that. Let's click on this photo here. Hopefully it loads up. Can you see in the bottom right, there's two beakers and it created a bridge of the water. So the surface tension of the water was increased so much that you could actually string it out and it could hold itself on a bridge. Another
Oh, wow.
example of that is above that, you have these spheres of water that are created. They look like little bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
But they can stand on their own. And you can see this in nature. I see it all the time now that it's been pointed out that I've seen this. When you in the morning, that's what morning dew looks like.
Yeah.
Forms on the leaf or on the and so the science that he's saying is that you need two things here. You need a water loving surface, a hydrophilic surface, i.e., the leaf or the blade of grass, and you need infrared light, which is very present in the morning light. So morning dew tends to form these little tiny vesicles. So the energy inside them holds its shape that it gains from the environment. Now,
Ooh.
inside the human body, it's theorized that we have this exclusion zone water and our body naturally makes it inside our mitochondria. It's actually the substance that fills our cells. So the water that you're creating, which is easy water here, when you shine, like we talked about earlier, infrared light, and that could be from the sun, it could be from, the infrared light that's coming off a rock, it could be the infrared light that your body naturally produces inside itself, right? We have heat coming off us, right? If you look at a, military camera or a police camera, they can sense this infrared light coming from people and even the environment itself. All the energy from the sun gets imparted into the ground, and then it irradiates all night even. So I want to know a little bit more about this easy water and how we can use it for our health. So what are the can you ask our panel, what are the benefits of consuming easy water?
Our molecular structure does not align with really what it's designed for.
Doesn't align with what easy water is, exclusion zone water?
Yeah, so how are they creating easy water?
So, okay, let's ask this then. Is the mitochondria producing easy water in the cell?
Eventually, yes.
Eventually, yes. So is the body inside of the water inside of our cells and inside of our body that's already there, like we're made up of mostly water. Is that easy water?
No.
Only the water in the cell is.
That's correct.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so if we were to consume easy water, let's say that, for instance, we had water in a jar, in a beaker, and we shine. It has to be a certain beaker, by the way. It has to be something like Naphion, or it has to be a water-loving surface. And so the beaker is made of this material, and then we shine infrared light from, like, say, like a infrared heat bulb on it. Would that make easy water?
Yes.
And so consuming this water, you're saying it doesn't align with our body's ability to absorb it?
It's not optimal. No.
Really? Wow, this is a huge insight for me here. Okay, so consuming the easy water is not good because the body has a hard time converting it. Is, since we're made of water, if I were to step into the sunlight and put my feet on the ground, would the water in my body start turning into easy water?
Only a very small portion inside the cell. You would have to stand there for hours and hours and hours. And eventually, if you have too much easy water, it becomes toxic.
Really? Okay. All right. So
I don't know. I don't even know what you're talking about at this point. My brain is fried, but
okay.
but
Okay.
that becomes almost like toxic. You can't have too much of this stuff because it does not align with a majority of the molecular structures within the body. And the body would put off like a toxin or a poison through the conversion of it. So we're not supposed to be exposed to that much sunlight all of the time. There has to be a balance.
Right. Yeah, obviously we have different tolerances for sun based on, who we are, what our background is. And the sun tells us to get out of the way, out of the sun at a certain time. There's signals that are going on. So it would probably be pretty hard unless you're going against, getting burnt all the time. Right. Okay, how about this? It's also theorized that inside plants, easy water exists. So when you juice them, you can be consuming easy water.
Juice and consuming easy water. Is it easy? No, we're not consuming easy water. A small portion of easy water, but what I'm getting is we're not consuming like mass quantities of easy water from the plants. That matches our DNA, our molecular structure. It's easy to read as opposed to easy water. It's like sort of they're scratching their heads going, what do we do with this on the inside?
Really? So it's so really it has to be created inside the cell by the body. We're not really trying to what's the word? Exogenously consume it for health.
That's correct.
Interesting. So nature has its own way to kind of regulate the easy. So the easy is important, but it needs to be the natural easy our body makes.
Yes. So does this person or these people sell this stuff?
No,
Oh,
no. No, he's a scientist that studies the easy water. But what's not known 100% is like how there's not studies of humans like ingesting it necessarily. We theorize that the body makes it in the mitochondria in the cell, which you've confirmed, right? I would be very surprised if that wasn't true. But what's unsure of is how the rest of the body uses it, or if we can consume it and it would impart energy to the body by exogenously consuming it.
no,
So this,
no. Mm-mm.
okay, okay, all right. The other thing I wanted to know was in relation to this, for instance, people have done studies on fluids in plants and animals. Like, for instance, our lymph fluid in our body, there's no pump like the heart that's pushing that lymph fluid through. And it's one of the theories is that it could be that it contains easy water like substance like consistency, and the energy in the water from infrared light from the environment is pumping or pushing this water or sorry lymph fluid through our body.
It's the electromagnetic pull inside the fluid.
Right, and in easy water, that's kind of what's going on. You're creating a positive and negative terminal in the water, and the environment is creating this excess of energy, which can be used mechanically. So, for instance, we saw the bridge of water. I think that might still be up on the screen, right? And those specific shapes that are formed. Is this what's a similar process to what's moving the lymph in our body?
It's a similar process, but it's not easy water.
Okay, yeah, because I've been to medical conventions and they have these infrared devices, just their light that you shine on your body, and it actually moves the lymph fluid. Is that correct?
Yes, to a
Okay,
point.
to a,
Yes.
to a point, it helps. Okay, so that interesting. And then also, it's theorized in plants, like in a tree, there's fluids in the tree, right? It takes the water up from the roots, and it has to get it to the top of the tree somehow, or it also has sap. Is that the mechanics of how that's working? Is that to do with infrared light, just like the lymph fluid hitting the water and then it's giving it energy to move up the tree?
It's not just infrared light. It's all the combination of sunlight. So
Ah,
within the ray of sunlight, there's many different structures and lights, some of which have not even been defined or able to be seen by the human eye.
right. Yeah, it's non-visual. Like infrared light is non-visual. You can't see it.
Right.
You can feel it, right? It's the heat portion of the in a lot of cases, it's some of the heat that you feel. Okay. So that's some new information on EZ. All right. So let's then ask our mitochondria make this water in our cells. What can we do for our mitochondria to make the proper amounts of EZ? Is there something that we can do? So we can't consume the water. It's theorized, for instance, that we can make easy water efficiently by eating fat, so healthy fats in our diet.
I mean, that's a small portion of it, yes, but it's basically just running your body like a machine optimally.
So everything kind of contributes to making that easy water, probably. How about this? How about grounding? So stepping out onto the earth with your bare feet, maybe on wet grass. Does this help the body have more of a negative charge or more easy in the cell?
Well, it releases tension. And what happens is when we're tense, because we live in a tense world, right? Maybe not you, but most people. And it releases the tension and it promotes the flow. But it takes a long time for the body to adjust to this, right? That's why everything's a process. People want instant, and it doesn't happen that way. It's a process. So you would really need to be on that ground for how long? About 30 minutes a day to relieve tension.
See, that's cool because for me, what I've learned is 45 minutes is like the best amount of time to do it.
Yes, right. So minimum 30, exactly.
Right. Okay, that makes total sense to me. Okay, I want to come back to that topic. That's a separate topic. Let's continue on with the water. So you asked about deuterium depleted water earlier on. We can move on to that. Now, let's ask, since we're talking about the mitochondria and the easy water in there, is it deuterium depleted water in that water in our cells?
So I'm sorry, what am I asking? Is it in our cells naturally?
Yes.
Eventually, once the body is processing and sorting, yes.
Okay, let's break it down for the audience because they have probably no idea what this is.
No, they won't. They may not understand how the process even works.
Okay, so deuterium depleted. Let's explain what deuterium depleted water is. So deuterium is actually an isotope of hydrogen. So we know hydrogen is like the most common. We have the dogs again. I'm gonna have to pause.
Okay.
Okay, so deuterium depleted water. Deuterium is as an isotope of hydrogen. So hydrogen is the smallest molecule in the universe, and it's actually the most present one. It's in everything, right? It's everywhere. And our body actually uses hydrogen in a lot of processes in the body. It's what we're made up of. The molecular structure is made up of it. Now, this isotope of hydrogen, it's actually it's a heavier version of it, meaning like its atomic mass is very heavy. So when it's in the body, it's theorized that too much, like it's needed in our body in some ways, but when there's too much there, it can be harder for the body to process it because it has so much more mass than regular hydrogen does. So people have created ways to create deuterium depleted water where it's very low in deuterium so that the hydrogen that's in the water is more available for our body to use for energy. That's kind of a simpler way of explaining it. I hope I've explained that well. Mm-hmm. Does our panel think that's an accurate way to describe it simply?
They're impressed.
That's good. Okay, so this deuterium depleted water exists naturally in nature. The farther that you go away from the equator, so you go higher up into Canada, some of the spring waters are going to be more deuterium depleted, especially at altitude. So I was actually getting deuterium depleted water from out west in Canada from a spring in the Rockies. And there's a company that does sell it. And I can't I remember the name of it. And I actually had it tested. I sent it into a lab and it showed that it was really low in deuterium. So it naturally occurs at high altitudes and then also away from the equator. And high deuterium water is actually found in seawater.
Oh.
That's kind of the difference. And it's also more available in like groundwater the closer that you go to the equator. So the theory of this is that the water has naturally built this in to the hydrology cycle where at the equator, if you're someone that's there eating a lot of the fruits and the vegetables that are made of this higher deuterium water, your body will actually have a better chance of detoxing it, let's say, or removing it from the body because you're under higher energies from the sun and sweat more, right? So if there's heat there, so you're sweating it out of your body. And yeah, so it's built into the system. Whereas if you're living at a high latitude, you don't have fruits and vegetables that are growing at the equator. There's no bananas growing there. So it's also theorized that high sugar food items have more deuterium in it. Is there anything there that I said that's not factual into our panel?
You're doing an excellent job. So people can make their own deuterium depleted water, and they do that, correct me if I'm wrong, by taking sort of a container, putting water, I would suggest filtered water, and then you put it in the freezer for I'm not sure how long, and then it forms like that cap of ice, right? And then you release that cap of ice, you throw that out, and then you let it do another cycle of the freezes at the top, and you throw that out, and then you drink the pure water. That is supposed to be exceptionally healthy. It's a very lengthy process. The water that is sold, I know what you're talking about. I've heard someone buy that before. Extremely expensive.
Yeah, it is extremely expensive. Now, okay, so I'm going to talk about that as well, but just because you're talking about the freezing method, I've heard that like people have done the math on it and it shouldn't really work that efficiently. Like it's nowhere near the level of depletion that you would get from the water that you can buy. So technically, when you're freezing the water, yes, once it goes into the ice formation, that's holding a lot of the heavier isotope there, and then the rest of the water is going to have less deuterium in it. But can you ask our panel, is it really effective to do that compared to the water that you buy?
I mean, it's not as effective compared to the water that you buy, but you're talking like hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a very small amount of water.
Yes, but when you're using the small amount of water, you have to mix it with regular water. So you really shouldn't, like most people shouldn't be drinking the straight deuterium water you buy in the bottles. The goal is to, let's say you have regular tap water, it's generally 155 parts per million on average. You would want, the idea of the expensive water you buy is you mix the two together so that you can get it down to like 120 or 115.
Does it get down to 115, 120 from freezing it? No, it gets down to about 135, 140, but it certainly is better than regular water for the body.
Okay, that's actually pretty reasonable because you don't have to get it down a ton to have a big effect because just how the mathematics of it work, deuterium is so heavy that even just removing a little bit of it should have a big effect. So even going down, like you're saying, like 15 parts per million, that should have quite a good effect. So can we look at what's the best process to freeze the water then? Because there's controversy about this. How many times do I got to do it?
Well, 4 times. So the person that I knew that did it only did it twice, but the best, most effective way is freezing it 4 times. I mean, this would be a full-time job.
Yes. Now, again, someone can invent something that can automate this process, but it would only be, I don't think why anybody have not invented it yet is because they're assuming that it's not effective. The amount of energy that it takes to freeze the water and to do it, it's just for the amount of depletion you get is not worth it. That's what most people think.
That's correct.
So just for perspective, the way that they're creating this deuterium depleted water in the bottles that you can buy for very expensive, I believe most of it is coming from what's the country next to Hungary? Can't remember.
Poland?
No, it's not Poland. Oh, not Ukraine.
Poland's
Okay.
probably.
It's coming from one of those countries where they have decommissioned nuclear reactors, and so deuterium depleted water is actually a byproduct of the nuclear industry because it's it comes out of the reactors. Not that it's radioactive, but it's just like, it's what they would throw away or I'm not actually, I think they would use it to actually in some part of the process to like maintain the stability of things. But because it comes from a freaking nuclear reactor, that's why it's so expensive. The amount of energy you need to create it is so vast. So
okay. And Hungary's not next to Poland. I knew it was nearby, but it wasn't right next to it. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So most of the water that you buy that's expensive, it's like $25 for a little tiny bottle. It's coming from the process of a nuclear reactor, or it's taking that much energy to create. So that's why people are skeptical that you can freeze the water and because it would just take so much energy. It takes so much energy to bring it down. Mm-hmm. The water that you're buying is 25 parts per million.
Wow. But most of us are running freezers all day, every day anyway.
Right.
So it's not as if it's going to absorb, an extra cost, or it's going to make you absorb an extra cost. We're running that sort of freezer all day. We have our freezers on. We don't just turn our freezers off.
True.
So I guess it's actually cheaper and more energy efficient to do it at home than buying and transporting, or relying upon something else to break it down. It's the most effective and environmentally friendly way is to do it yourself.
Right.
But you would need to do it 4 times. So you would have to set a timer. Do you know how long it takes? It needs to be in the freezer for?
I don't remember. Can you ask?
How long does it need for each time? How long does it? 1 to 2 hours.
Okay. And that's for a container, how big?
Container. About a gallon.
So yeah, we're going to be using deep freezers.
An American gallon. Sorry.
And you could never get it down to the 25 parts per million of the stuff that I have on my screen right now.
Can you ever get it down to the 25 parts? No, no, that's not even natural.
Okay, so yeah, it's not even in nature. This is natural. The idea is that you mix this with the water that you already have to get it down to 120. You're saying that the freezer water goes down to 140, 135, which for the average person might be good. But this is the other question that I have. It's being used specifically in tumor reduction and cancer. So can we ask, what is the lowest parts per million we need generally to affect tumor growth or cancer?
What is the lowest parts per million that we need to affect, to reverse? 110.
See, okay, that makes sense. That matches up actually. Yeah. So most people are saying, yeah, 100, they want to do 110 to 120, I believe, that range. So the freezer thing is not quite going to get you there. It's probably more for optimal health, not so much with something serious like that.
how many times will we have to freeze it to get to 110? You'd have to do it about 8 times.
Oh, so you can get there.
You can, but you would have to do it 8 times.
Okay.
And your water would be so pure. By the time you've taken a gallon of water and you've done it 8 times and you've peeled the top off the layer that's frozen, peel it off, it's going to be very minimal amount left. But if you had that, what if you have cancer and you only, does it help with that? It helps with all diseases. It's not just cancer. It helps with all diseases because it creates a negative, I don't know what they're trying to say to me, but a negative, like it starves the cancer cells, the tumors.
Right. Yeah. So the reason that I think it can work on pretty much any chronic disease for the most part is that, and we can ask this. So the mitochondria are the energy power plants of the cell. If the water that they're making is deuterium depleted, then they're able to make more energy. Is that correct?
Absolutely powerhouse.
So if we're drinking deuterium depleted water, our body has to work, doesn't have to work as hard to process that water to make energy.
That's correct. So you have more energy to do other things.
Right. And the body's intelligent, it's going to then naturally reroute that power to where it needs to go to do the healing.
That's correct.
Okay, so my question was, so we're hearing that it's good for people that are very ill, right, and restoring body energy to the body. Is there anything that's the average for, like, for instance, for me, I'm in pretty good shape, right? Is there any benefit for me to take it, or to someone that's and they're doing okay?
For you, it's just simply preventative.
Yeah, it's just preventative, right? There's no, it's not going to make me Superman.
The body will always end up breaking down at some point.
Sure.
So it just extends that time period before the body breaks down. So, I think it's called, so we have the lifespan, but you want it to be as healthy as possible in that span, particularly as the body is getting older and it starts naturally breaking down. So you want to increase that quality. Whereas somebody who is just, drinking unfiltered water, not really exercising, doing that mitochondria exchange, that's really important for functioning of the body. That process, the chemical process of converting energy, right?
Yeah, this is the number one thing I feel.
Huge.
Anything that affects the mitochondria, I'm interested in.
We should do a whole probe on telomeres.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'd like to do a whole probe on mitochondria, and we can also do telomeres, and things that would affect quality of life and longevity as well. Because, like you're saying, I mean, and even when we know with the spiritual probes, we have a life contract. We're only going to be here for so long. So in that perspective, I want to improve the quality of life that we do have.
Right. Exactly. And you want to, yes, you want to extend the quality.
Yeah, that logically makes the most sense to me in terms of the what we can control, what we can't control. Okay, so in order for someone, so there's testing that you can do, and it's through is it breath or saliva, and you send it away, and it supposedly measures your deuterium levels in your body. It's not a direct measurement though. It's like kind of like a, you know, Is that effective in can we measure it through the breath or saliva effectively to know how much we have? We have too little or too much?
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So it
Most of
wasn't.
us have too much. Most of us have more than what we should have, and that brings the body into, a state of, it can end up being a state of disrepair where you're unable to repair the damage that's been done. And you said that sugar creates deuterium?
So it can have it in it. So the theory is that in uh, photosynthesis, there's specific plants that have a specific type of photosynthesis where they create more deuterium, and it just happens to be in a lot of the tropical fruits. And now that's naturally in nature, so that, and you can tell me if I think you told me if I was correct in this, is that being close to the equator where they naturally grow, our body can then detox it through sweating because it's hotter, and also the sunlight that we get is stronger. That'll also help get rid of it in our body naturally. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. So here's the question, and here's the big like controversy that I bring up, and most people don't believe this. Let's see if it's true. If I'm eating a banana in Manitoba, Canada in December, I'm increasing my deuterium because my body can't get rid of it there as effectively.
That is absolutely 100% correct.
Thank you very much for confirming this, Liz. So eating a local seasonal diet is very important for more reasons than people think.
Yes, because it all has to do with what you're processing. Wow.
All right. Okay. I love this.
But what is a local diet anymore? I don't even think anybody actually knows.
Well, that's true. Now, I suggest my clients they go to their local farmers market at least to see what's going there and growing, and talk to the farmers and being like, what grows here, right? And you'll be surprised at how much is trucked, especially from a place where I'm from in Canada. There's a very small growing season, right? So when I was there, I'm living abroad now. I'm in a more tropical climate. When I was there, I would experiment eating seasonally with the place that I was in. So when it was, everything was harvest time, I was eating everything that could grow at that latitude, right? And I would know that by the farmers that are growing stuff at the market. And then in the winter time, I would eat no fruit. I would eat the things that would naturally be growing. Like there are some cruciferous vegetables like cabbage and like broccoli that can technically grow if you know how to grow them, like in the colder temperatures. And then like root vegetables and stuff can last a bit longer. But in the depths of winter, I was eating mostly like more meat, more fat, more I was eating seaweed because that can actually grow year round in that climate. I was eating oysters, right? And so I guess my next question is that eating seasonally like that in a climate like Canada, that's going to naturally keep your deuterium levels down.
That is correct.
Perfect. Okay, now here's the other side of the coin. Where we also get deuterium in our diet from is processed foods, particularly things that we've all seen, maybe we haven't, but you can read the back of labels and you'll see hydrogenated this, hydrogenated that.
Yes, hydrogenated. Yes, because it converts.
Now, okay, so the other thing is one of the things that's highest that I think has been measured is like I don't know if this is the same brand you'd have in the United States, but it's like Crisco cooking oil or it's like fake lard shortening. It's like artificial shortening.
That's very deadly, yes.
Yeah, and it's really high in deuterium. So all the processed foods that are outside of the natural food web, those would be generally higher in deuterium, correct?
That is correct.
Right. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay. So this is really cool. So most people think, okay, there's all these, which there is, chemicals and stuff in the processed food, but is it worse because it has a higher deuterium content in it? than even the other chemicals and stuff that are in the food?
Yes, because the body doesn't know what to do with it.
All right. Okay. So I got a smile on my face, right? Because we're really getting to the bottom of some stuff. This stuff that you're hearing, I want to say to the audience, this is like cutting edge stuff that nobody really knows about. And it's stuff that I do teach, and now it's being absolutely confirmed. I've seen the science on this stuff, but it's still like the mainstream is still like poo-pooing it. So this is very, very important information. Okay. So we know where it's coming from. We know how to get rid of it, right? We can drink the deuterium depleted water. How about this? There's another way to get deuterium depleted water that's controversial. There's a machine, and I don't know if I need to pull it up, but it's called the John Ellis machine.
Can you put it on the screen for us?
1 second.
The John Ellis machine?
Yeah, let's see if I can find it here. So this actually works similarly where it's heating up and cooling the water. Oh, crap, that didn't work. Hold on.
Well, that picture's fine.
Yeah, there it is right there. It's kind of expensive.
Oh, wow.
So this is, I think it does something similar to the process of freezing and unfreezing. Can you ask if it is effective at creating deuterium depleted water?
No. It's a junk.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what I thought. That's what I've been told. I obviously couldn't prove it myself, but I know people that have measured it or have claimed to have measured it, and it was a no-go. So that's good to know because they're very expensive and they don't work in that respect, anyways.
Jeez, I mean, that price tag.
I mean, if it did make it and it made it at the levels like of, the tiny little water bottles, it'd be worth it, right? But, obviously doesn't work at all. So at least for that, anyways, I don't know if it's effective at the other things it claims. Okay, so we can make the water in the freezer ourselves, and we can drink that water, and then we can also eat a local seasonal diet. And we can also get out into, if we're lucky to have proper sun, like strong sun, we can get in the sun and help get rid of it. And then we can also sweat it out. So sauna.
Not in Canada. Oh, sauna. Yeah.
Okay.
Woo, it's cold up there. I don't know how people can cope with those winters. Geez.
Right. Sauna, right? And then the other thing I heard too was we actually urinated out. Is that true? Deuterium, excess deuterium?
Eventually, yes.
So
that's the last resort.
Okay. So given those things that we just mentioned, is there anything else that would be effective at decreasing deuterium in the body?
Just living a plant-based lifestyle.
Okay. Now here's the other thing that I've heard is that actually being in a level of ketosis, which means you're burning just fat for fuel, would decrease deuterium because you're mostly just eating fat and there's none of that, you're not eating fruits, you're not eating any like candy bars or sugars and stuff like that. So it'd naturally be low.
Being in a ketosis state with that, not necessarily.
How about maybe not saying ketosis, but eating a higher fat diet?
No.
So can they explain why a plant-based diet specifically would be better for lowering deuterium?
Because the process runs smoothly. whereas the body wants to hold on to fat.
Right, but when we're burning the fat for fuel instead of the sugar, then we would be getting in less deuterium from the fat.
We burn sugar faster than we burn fat.
Correct. That is correct. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. So
but the plant-based diet would be higher in sugars, though, no? In some cases.
well, not if you're sticking to like an alkaline, like spinach, kale, salad, basically non-sugary diet for the most part. I mean, you need some sugar, but not much. We actually only need, for optimum health, a very small amount of sugar.
Right. So, okay, so when we say like, okay, plant-based diet, people would, if they're off the top of their head, they're going to be eating they're going to be eating all kinds of fruits and like, root vegetables and stuff like that that might be higher in deuterium. But when we say plant-based diet here, we mean a low deuterium plant-based diet, which would be lower in sugar.
Right, exactly. So, and it takes a lot for the body to burn fat and oil. It takes a lot. It's almost like the last resort.
Really? So yeah, this is kind of counter to how a lot of people are thinking about deuterium, because they're thinking by eating more fat. Because ask this: is fat, like, we're talking about healthy fats, we're not talking about man-made fats. We're talking about like avocados, egg yolks, fat that you would get off an animal naturally. Is that naturally lower in deuterium?
Is that naturally lower in deuterium? No, a little bit, but not to the effect that you want it to create a healing machine with your body.
Okay, so it is a smaller amount that's in it, but it's still okay. So the act of actually the mechanics, it's not as effective as eating, spinach and kale, because it just makes things run smoother.
Right. So if you want to go and you want to put your body in like optimum preventative, optimum healing machine, you need to go all really non-sugary plants.
Right. Okay, so the juice fast would then expedite this process.
Does juice fasting help? So, because I don't want to get thrown off of YouTube. Is juice fasting preventative for cancer? Absolutely, because juice fasting throws out damaged and diseased cells due to the state of autophagy. Autophagy is created by lack of fiber and having to work hard to really digest that food. So, can it cure cancer completely? In some cases, it can. Why can't it cure all cancer? Because sometimes the cancer is too far gone.
You probably shouldn't say cure.
No, right. And I don't know what the alternative words would be.
Yeah, you could say like mitigate, or can it affect it, or something like that. People will know what we mean. I think that's the one thing you're not supposed to say.
Oh, here. So can it mitigate cancer? I mean, it could certainly help, but as part of a combined treatment, like don't,
Yeah,
as a supplemental treatment.
absolutely. Okay, so here's the other thing, just to be super clear. It seems contradictory to me that, okay, so if we're eating a seasonal diet, my background is from the United Kingdom, or people that are from like Sweden and stuff like that. Naturally, they wouldn't have things growing for a large part of the year. So in nature, we wouldn't really be able to eat the plant-based diet year round. So if you were living by nature's rules in that environment, there's a period of time where you may only have animal fat available to you. So would that be built? Is that still a good thing in the seasonality of things, if that's where you live?
Yes and no. Okay, I get what they're saying here because in an ideal world, if we were still living like how we used to live, as in we're walking, we're gathering, we're hunting, we're building, we're fetching water, carrying water. Yes. But because of our lifestyle differences now, no.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's to the degree which you live like a modern human, or you're very active in the natural environment. If you're very active in the natural environment, then you could eat more of those things, and your body would require more. But if we're just living an office job and sitting around, not doing too much, then it doesn't. It's just easier energetically on the body
We're
data.
we're taking in far more calories than we're burning.
Right.
When they put out those caloric charts of 2000 whatever calories a day, that was a long time ago. That
Ah,
was before we're now not doing anything. We're burning very, very small amounts of calories.
wow.
We're not active enough to uh so funny because I'm like, even in Europe, like now people walk everywhere. Yes, but then they're breathing in, terrible air quality. So that's hindering the body's processing, uh being able to process effectively, because now they're having to deal with all the air pollution and the toxins that are being taken in with the air. So that really is not the answer. Well, I live in a city and I walk everywhere. You're talking about in the day, back in the day when we lived that local diet, we were busy. We were working from sun up to sundown. We were constantly moving. We weren't sitting down. We were doing jobs all day long. So, not now. This whole concept of how we're living now, we really need to reevaluate the caloric burning. We're just not living effectively. So we're going to have to make some really big adjustments to our diet. Therefore, eating the meat and the fat in the wintertime, back then, yes. Now, no. You're better off eating like fish and low sugary vegetables. I mean, if you think about the way we ate back then, because I'm saying, is our body still structured in that way? Yes. But the way we ate back then, we didn't eat carbs and all of this stuff that we eat now.
Well, be in season, right? Only when the carbs are growing.
Yeah, but then you were burning it off anyway because the weather was, you're doing most of your work in that season, preparing for the winter.
Right. And putting on fat for the winter so that you can make it through.
Yeah, putting on fat in the winter. Yes, I mean, technically, yes. Yes, that's correct. But now, no, we
Well,
have to completely change.
so when you say plant-based diet, you're also including fish into that. Let's be clear.
Um, well,
Right.
when we were talking about the healing properties, you would only include like small, protein. You obviously you have to have protein, your hair is going to fall out, right? So um you would include like small amounts of protein. Some people can't eat nuts and seeds all day long. So yes, that's a good way. But when you're talking about just overall, that yes, you could include like fish and non-sugary vegetables.
Gotcha.
We've got to stop the sugar. Now, it's really hard, right? Especially if you have children.
Oh yeah.
It is exceptionally hard because, you know, they have these new policies in the schools now where they don't like to have outside, especially for the little ones, they don't like to have outside food bringing in because this one's allergic to this and this one's allergic to that. So now we're supplying the food. And I would send my child with, you know, like sliced apples or banana or, you know, something healthy, fruit and carrot sticks, celery, stuff like that. And because they don't have time to do that, they're feeding them boxes of like Cheerios, or it's really, really hard. You're fighting against a society that doesn't know how to eat.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, it's a money thing as well. And you know, I know in the United States they contract people in to feed the children at school. So it's like Coca-Cola and all that stuff is they have contracts they have to meet, right? So there's that too.
Yeah. Well, it's maximum profit at all
Yeah.
times, right?
Okay.
So we have a budget, we contract out to a corporation or to a company, they have to make money. So what are they going to do? They're going to feed people the cheapest, nastiest food possible so they can maximize their profit. It's all about profit. So therefore, maybe the government should have their own company that supplies the schools, but you know, they don't care that much about us. So yeah, and don't forget, they want you to be sick. So a lot of times in places that have a national healthcare system, I'm not saying those places the system is great, but the government takes a more active approach on preventatives. So like in the UK, you'll have color coding on the packaging, like this is bad, this is red, eat this is green, you know, and they constantly pump out information about how you're supposed to eat and what happens if you don't eat properly, what happens if you don't have enough exercise. Now, those of us in the States, a lot of us will say, well, that's the government trying to tell me how to live. And yes, that's true too. That's the government interfering in your daily life because you're not on a national healthcare system. Therefore, the government isn't paying for your healthcare in the end of your life, or all of these problems that you're contracting. You actually pay for that, or the insurance companies pay for that, and your employer pays for that. So there's a real lack of preventative medicine here. It's really down to the individual educating themselves. But so maximum profit, contracting out to these schools, but they do that around the world, you know, because the government really doesn't want to have that extra burden of now we got to feed these kids. And if they could rely upon parents feeding their children, then they wouldn't have to serve food in the schools. Everybody could go to school with a packed lunch. However, how many children are not being taken care of properly in the home? They don't have access to food. Their parents are possibly drug addicts or alcoholics or mentally ill. And so the only time they get to eat, or poverty, and the only time they get to eat is it at school. So, you know, it's a real hard thing to navigate. And when you're trying to teach your children, you know, this is healthy, this isn't healthy, and then you're sending them into an environment that feeds them unhealthy food, you're fighting a battle. It's the same thing with the internet and the smartphones and the gaming consoles and all of that. All of you out there know I don't allow that in my house, right? But it's hard because everybody else has it. Everybody else has smartphones at 9 years old, and everybody else is addicted to pornography at 8 and 9 years old. Well, Mom, why won't you let me? And so that's another battle and another video. But
Yes.
yeah, so it's a really difficult thing to do, but we definitely are not working all day now, physical hard labor. Even if you're female, you were cooking and cleaning and bathing and washing, and you're doing all of this stuff, and you're exhausted from sun up to sundown. And so no, that those diets are no longer, I mean, obviously the summertime, yes, but saying just sticking to the meat diet in the winter. And actually I did a reading for someone before that was on a carnivore diet, and
Yes.
in the end it was going to kill them.
Yeah, I feel like, at least how I see it, is a lot of these diets that are very extreme, I think they could have some benefits for a short term time, right? Because on a carnivore diet, at least you may be removing things for a short period of time that could be, you know, your body can't handle. Like, it could be toxins, could be, stuff you're allergic to, or whatever it is. You're getting rid of almost everything except the meat. So your body might, for a short period of time, catch up energetically, and then you can have a more balanced diet that you go into afterwards. But long term, you're going to be imbalanced because it is such a extreme thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think this was an extremely effective probe. I hope it helps a lot of people. I hope they are definitely more informed. You certainly know your stuff. So again, if anybody wants to contact Mr. Photon about all the, health, and also you do crypto introductions. So you introduce people how to the crypto system,
Yes,
how.
like
Mm-hmm.
consults in general. So if it is a beginner, I have a process for that. Or if it is someone that's more advanced that wants to do something specific, that's also an option as well.
Great. All right. And thank you so much. This was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.